I found my son and my granddaughter living under a bridge. I was speechless when I remembered my daughter-in-law had said they moved to Australia and would never come back after the fight 3 years ago. I took them home, but when my son revealed the secret about his wife, I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my revenge story. I want to know how far it has reached. I arrived in Savannah on an afternoon with soft sunshine. The hotel room I rented was small, but it had a tiny balcony overlooking a street full of people coming and going. I dragged my suitcase into a corner and stood still for a moment looking out. Street performers' songs could be heard in the distance, mixed with the laughter and conversations of tourists. I told myself this trip was for healing, to forget the heavy days in Chicago, where my house now only held silence and painful memories. I took my purse and left the hotel, walking to a small downtown square with a murmuring fountain and cool stone benches. I sat down silently, watching a mime perform for the crowd. I looked around, searching for a little joy in the unfamiliar faces, but my eyes unintentionally stopped on a corner behind the fountain. There, a little girl was curled up, hugging a battered old rag doll that only had one eye. She was thin, with bare, dusty feet and tangled hair matted with sweat. She wasn't asking for money like other children. She just sat there silent, with big, sad eyes watching people pass by. I don't know why, but that image squeezed my heart. There was something in her posture, in the way she held her doll, that felt painfully familiar. A couple passed nearby, and the woman accidentally dropped a piece of a cookie. The girl looked at the piece, her eyes bright, but full of doubt. She hesitated for a long time, as if afraid someone would see her, and then she slowly crawled over, picked up the cookie, dusted it off carefully, and put it in the torn pocket of her coat. That gesture was like a needle piercing my chest. I couldn't stand it anymore. I threw the ice cream I was eating into the nearest trash can. I got up and walked quickly to a bakery a few feet away. I bought 2 fresh croissants, still warm and fragrant, and a small carton of chocolate milk. I went back to the square and approached the girl. I knelt down, trying to soften my voice. "Here you go, little one." She flinched and lifted her head to look at me. Her eyes were large, dark, and full of mistrust, like a scared little animal. I smiled and pushed the bag of pastries toward her, but when her gaze met mine, time seemed to stop. On her right eyelid there was a small mole so tiny you had to look closely to notice it. That mole was just like Michael's, my son. I felt the air get stuck in my throat, as if someone was squeezing my chest. My granddaughter was in Australia, living a comfortable life with her parents. I repeated that to myself, but my hands were shaking as I offered her the bag again. The girl hesitated a moment and then held out her thin little hand to take it. Her small, cold fingers touched mine, and then she whispered something that made my whole world collapse. "Grandma, is that really you?" Her voice was weak, trembling, but so clear I couldn't pretend I had misheard. I snatched my hand back as if I'd been burned. My heart was pounding, my mind spinning. I stood up immediately, took a step back, and forced an awkward smile. "You're mistaken, little one. My granddaughter is in Australia with her parents." I didn't dare look into the girl's eyes anymore. That look, sad but full of hope, seemed to beg me not to go. I turned around and walked quickly, trying to escape the strange feeling crushing my chest. I kept telling myself it couldn't be my granddaughter. How could it be? But the girl's weak voice still haunted me, echoing behind me. "Grandma, don't go. Grandma." I heard her hurried little steps, the sound of her sandals hitting the pavement. She was running after me, her voice broken by sobs. I stopped in the middle of a narrow alley, my heart in a knot. The girl, thin and wide-eyed, was still clinging to the hem of my blouse, as if afraid I would disappear if she let go. In my hand, the crumpled tourist map no longer made any sense. The colorful streets, the melodies of the mariachis, everything blurred in front of that pleading gaze. Tears rolled down her dirty face, but she wasn't crying loudly, just sobbing softly, her voice trembling. "You really don't recognize me, Grandma. It's me." I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if someone was squeezing my heart. I finally sighed and sat down on the step of a long-closed shop. The cold stone under my feet didn't matter anymore. I looked at the girl, trying to keep my voice soft. "It's okay, little one. Tell me, why are you here alone? Where are your parents?" The girl shook her head, her small hand clinging to mine, afraid I would get up and leave. Tears welled up again, sliding down her cheeks, but she tried to hold them back as she said in a weak voice, "If you don't believe me, I'll take you to see my dad. When you see him, you'll believe me." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to run to go back to the hotel, lock the door and pretend this meeting never happened. But that girl's look, a mix of hope and fear, was like an invisible rope holding me there. I nodded, letting her take my hand and lead me. Her hand was icy, so thin I could feel every little bone. She led me away from the tourist streets full of laughter and lights. We turned onto a narrow dirt path hidden next to a river that flowed lazily through the city. A smell of dampness and garbage made me frown, but the girl didn't seem to notice. She walked faster, as if afraid I would change my mind. The path led us down a trail where the sunlight disappeared under the shadow of an old concrete bridge. Under the bridge, the air was heavy, damp, and cold. I saw cardboard boxes spread out on the dirty ground, a ragged blanket, empty plastic bottles, and a small, long-extinguished fire pit. It was not a place to live, much less for a child. My heart sank, but before I could say anything, the girl let go of my hand and ran ahead. "Dad, look who I brought!" Her voice rang out, nervous. A man with his back to us was digging through a pile of junk metal. He wore a torn jacket, and his thin hands were picking out cans and bottles to put in a large sack. When he heard her, he grunted in a hoarse voice, "Natalie, I've told you 1,000 times not to bother people." He didn't turn around right away. He just slowly straightened up, wiped his hands on his worn-out jeans, and finally turned around. In that moment, I felt time stop. Even though his hair was messy and a neglected beard covered most of his face, even though his body was so thin it looked like just skin and bones, I recognized him immediately. It was Michael, my only son. The purse in my hand fell to the ground with a thud. I stood frozen, unable to say a word. My mouth went dry, my head was spinning. This couldn't be my Michael, my strong, energetic son, the one who used to laugh loudly in my kitchen when I made him his favorite chili. But those eyes, tired and red, were still my son's eyes. Michael saw me, and I clearly saw the color drain from his face. First it was surprise, as if he couldn't believe I was really there. Then fear, and finally deep shame. He quickly pushed Natalie behind him, protecting her by instinct. He lowered his head and muttered almost in a whisper, "I'm sorry. We don't have anything to give you. Please leave." I knew instantly he was pretending not to recognize me. He didn't want me to see him like this, ragged, dirty, living under a bridge like a homeless man. But I couldn't let him push me away again. I took a step forward, ignoring the damp earth under my feet. My legs were shaking, but I couldn't stop. I raised my hand, wanting to touch his face, to make sure it wasn't a dream, but my hand stayed suspended in the air, not daring to touch. My voice broke, full of pain. "Michael, what happened to you, son?" I couldn't hold back the tears. For 3 years I lived with the pain of losing him, and now he was in front of me, but in this state. I didn't understand. I couldn't comprehend how everything had become so terrible. Hearing his name, Michael, seemed to collapse. The wall he had tried to build crumbled completely. He raised his head, his red-rimmed eyes full of tears. He knelt on the ground, took his head in his hands, and in a voice choked with sobs, he said, "Mom, I'm sorry. It's all my fault." His cry, though he tried to suppress it, echoed under the silent bridge. Natalie, scared, looked at him and then at me. She ran to him, hugged his shoulder, and said in a trembling voice, "Dad, don't cry. Don't cry, please. Grandma is here. She's going to help us, right, Grandma?" Minutes later, I was sitting on an icy stone under the bridge, watching Michael use the torn sleeve of his shirt to wipe Natalie's dirty face. His hands trembled, but they were gentle, as if he was afraid of hurting her. That image broke my heart. My Michael, the tall, strong boy, always smiling like a ray of sunshine, was now just a shadow of the man he was: thin, exhausted, covered in dust. His torn, dirty clothes, matted hair, and thick beard made him look unrecognizable. Only his eyes were still the same, tired, but full of the kindness of the son I raised for 30 years. Natalie cuddled against her father, hugging her broken doll, her big eyes looking at me as if asking for help. I wanted to hug them both to protect them from that damp, cold place, but the memory of that fateful day 3 years ago came back to me like an avalanche, clear, painful, impossible to stop. It was a Saturday afternoon, the sky clear and the sun soft. I was in my small kitchen in Chicago, stirring the chili that was simmering in the pot, Michael's favorite dish since he was a boy. I was smiling, thinking about dinner that night when the whole family would be together again, laughing and talking like in the old days. Natalie, who was only 3 at the time, would surely be happy to see her little bowl full of cilantro. I had also prepared a dish of limes and sliced radishes, just how Michael liked it. But then the front door burst open so hard that it startled me, and I almost dropped the wooden spoon I was holding. I heard heavy, hurried footsteps, and then Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway, followed by Anna, my daughter-in-law. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying, but I immediately recognized the way she clung to Michael, like an actress playing a victim. Michael threw his car keys onto the dining table, making a sharp noise that made me stop. His face was tense, and his eyes burned with anger, a look I had never seen in my son before. "Mom, come here, we need to talk," he said in an icy voice. I wiped my hands on my apron and went into the living room, my heart already uneasy. "What's wrong, Michael? Why are you so upset?" I tried to keep my voice calm, even though something inside me sensed the worst. He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, fists clenched, until he suddenly pointed his finger at me. "Stop pretending, Mom. Why are you talking badly about Anna to the neighbor? You said she's lazy, that she doesn't know how to take care of her daughter, and that she only spends my money, right?" His voice trembled with fury, but what hurt me most was his look full of disappointment and distance. I froze as if someone had slapped me hard. Who told you that?" I stammered, trying to remember if I had said anything to Mrs. Mary, my neighbor. Yes, I had complained sometimes, it's true, but only as a mother worried about her son. I never said Anna was lazy, much less that she only knew how to spend money. Before I could explain, Anna spoke through sobs, clinging to Michael like a child seeking protection. "I told you, honey, don't make this a bigger deal. It's just that I can't take it anymore. This morning your mom wouldn't let me take Natalie to the park. She said it was a waste of gas." She wiped her tears, but I clearly saw the calculation behind her gaze. I tried to stay calm, my voice trembling. "I just said the traffic is heavy on weekends, Anna. I didn't mean to forbid you." But Michael interrupted me abruptly, as if I were a liar. "Enough, Mom. Anna already told me everything. You say her family is poor, you always criticize her. You control my money, and you even said that giving money to my wife is for idiots." Every word was a stab in the chest. I didn't understand how everything had gone so far. I just wanted the best for my son, for him and Anna to live in peace, for Natalie to grow up in a happy home. But my words no longer held any weight. Michael wasn't listening. He only believed his wife's tears. I moved closer, wanting to take his hand, wanting to tell him I never meant to hurt him. But he stepped back with a cold look as if I were a stranger and not his mother. "From now on, I don't want you in my life," he said through gritted teeth, every word like a hammer striking my soul. "Even if I starve in the street, I will never come back to you." That sentence froze my heart. I stood motionless in the middle of the living room while the aroma of the chili in the kitchen became bland, empty, meaningless. Michael turned around and took Anna's hand, going straight up to the bedroom. I heard the closet open, the sound of things being thrown hastily into a suitcase. I ran upstairs and stood in the doorway only to witness a heartbreaking scene. Michael and Anna were packing clothes and belongings as if they couldn't stand to be in that house for another second. Natalie was curled up on the bed, hugging her small doll, crying hysterically with fear. "Dad, where are we going? I don't want to go," she sobbed, but Anna just coldly handed Michael more clothes without even looking at me. Michael didn't say anything either, just packed in silence, avoiding my gaze. Minutes later, they came down together, opened the front door, and left. The slam of the door echoed like a final period. I didn't even have time to hug my granddaughter one last time. Natalie looked back. Her big eyes looked at me, but Anna's hand pulled her, and she disappeared into the darkness. The following weeks, I lived like a ghost. The house once full of laughter became a huge and suffocatingly silent place. I called Michael, but he didn't answer. I sent him messages with no reply. I went to his friends' houses, to places where I thought he might be, but nobody knew anything. Every day, I sank deeper into pain and guilt. I wondered what I had done wrong, what word or gesture had pushed him so far away. There were nights when I sat in the kitchen staring at the now cold chili which I kept cooking out of habit, hoping that one day Michael would come back. Until one night the phone vibrated. A message from Anna's number appeared on the screen. My hands trembled as I opened it, hoping for an explanation, a chance to start over. But the content was like a final stab. "Don't contact us anymore. We are arranging to go to Australia. Michael says he doesn't want a mother like you. Forget us." I read it and reread it, every word a deep cut. I fell to the floor, tears streaming uncontrollably. I truly believed I had lost my son forever. The damp smell of the nearby river hit me, mixed with the heavy, dark air that brought me back to reality. Natalie clung to me, her small hand gripping the hem of my coat tightly, as if afraid I would disappear. Michael stood in front of me, his thin shoulders shaking under an old torn jacket. I looked him in the eyes. Those eyes that once shone with life and hope now only showed exhaustion and regret. I couldn't stand to see him like this. I took a bottle of water and a croissant I had bought for Natalie from my purse. "Eat, son," I said in a soft but firm voice. "Natalie needs you to be strong too." Michael took the bread, his hand trembling, his calloused fingers covered in dust. He broke off a small piece and chewed it with difficulty, as if even eating was a burden. Natalie looked at him worriedly and then whispered to me, "Dad doesn't like bread. He always says he'd rather save it for me." The girl's innocent words pierced my heart. I squeezed her hand, holding back tears. "I know, my love. But Dad needs to eat now, to have strength to take you home with me, okay?" I looked Michael directly in the eyes. My voice trembled, heavy with pain. "Anna, she told me you were going to Australia. She said you wanted nothing to do with me. Why did you end up like this, Michael?" I needed the truth. I needed to understand what had turned my once proud son into a shadow living under a bridge. Michael lowered his head, clutching the piece of bread as if trying to find courage. He swallowed. His hoarse voice began to tell the story, and every word he spoke was another stab in my heart. "She was right, Mom." Michael began, his gaze fixed on the ground. "The plan was to go to Australia. Anna said she had a contact there, an old friend in construction. She said they would get us a good job, a new life. I believed her. I thought it was a chance for Natalie to have a better future." He paused for a moment, taking a deep breath as if trying to contain the pain. To speed up the paperwork, she asked me to sign a bunch of papers. She said it was an authorization so she could represent the family at the embassy and prove financial stability. I didn't read them carefully, Mom. I trusted her completely. I felt a surge of anger, but not at Michael, at myself. I had seen the signs for a long time. The way Anna was always sweet in front of me, but cold when I wasn't around. How she tried to get between my son and me, but I did nothing, thinking they were just small marital issues. I shook my head, my voice trembling. "And then what happened, son? What did she do?" Michael continued, his voice getting lower, as if every word was a painful confession. "I took out all my savings, Mom. I sold the car, the one we bought together after so many years of effort. I gave her everything. She said she needed the money for the documents, the plane tickets, and the initial expenses in Australia. I didn't doubt anything. I thought she was doing it all for our family." He let out a bitter laugh. "But a week before the flight, I received a court summons. Anna had filed for divorce. The complaint said I was abusing her and Natalie." I froze. I felt the blood turn to ice in my veins. "Abuse you!" I almost shouted, unable to believe what I was hearing. Michael, my son, who was always so gentle with Natalie, who never raised his voice to anyone accused of abuse. I squeezed Natalie's hand tightly, as if to protect her from those lies. "How dare she?" I whispered, my voice thick with rage. Michael shook his head, his eyes red. "I didn't have money for a lawyer, Mom. All the assets were in her name because of that authorization paper. I had nothing left. The judge ruled in her favor. I still foolishly believed it was just a formality so we could go to Australia because that's what she told me. I thought she was doing it for some reason that she would explain it later." He stopped covering his head with his hands, trying to push away the memories. Natalie cuddled into my arms and whispered, "Dad didn't hit Mom, Grandma. Dad never hit her." I held her tight, and the tears began to fall. "I know, Natalie. I know your dad is a good man." I looked at Michael, my voice firm. "Go on, son. I want to know everything." Michael took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. The day of the flight, she was still smiling. She took us to the airport and said Natalie and I should wait in the chairs while she checked in and dropped off the luggage. She had all the cash, all 3 passports, and the plane tickets. I sat there holding Natalie, waiting. 1 hour, 2 hours. They called the flight for the last time. I called her, but her phone was already off. I ran to the counter, almost out of my mind. They told me her name was on the passenger list and the plane had already taken off. A chill ran down my spine. The image of Michael and Natalie sitting in the airport, confused and waiting, while Anna had left with everything, made me want to scream. She abandoned you both?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Michael nodded, his voice trembling. "The next day, while we were at the terminal, not knowing where to go, she called me from an unknown number." He stopped, took a deep breath as if needing to gather strength to continue. "She laughed on the phone, Mom. A cold laugh, as if she was enjoying my pain. She told me, 'See, you were an idiot for trusting me and doubting your own mother. This is the price of your stupidity. Don't ever look for me again.'" As he said this, Michael couldn't hold back. He collapsed onto my shoulder and broke down crying like a child. His muffled sobs, full of pain, tore through the silence under the bridge. Natalie cried too, hugging her father, her voice trembling. "Dad, don't cry. Mommy wasn't nice, but we have Grandma now." I held them both tightly, my tears falling endlessly. The rage toward Anna consumed me like a fire that wanted to burn everything. But more than that, I felt an infinite sadness for Michael, my naive son, who had trusted the wrong person and paid with his entire life. I stood up and made them stand. "Let's go," I said firmly, though I was still shaking inside. "Home with Mom. No more bridges, no more garbage, no more hunger. I will not let you suffer one more day." Michael hesitated, his eyes full of shame. "Mom, I don't deserve this. I hurt you. I said horrible things. I can't." But I interrupted him, squeezing his hand. "You are my son. Nothing in this world can change that. Let's go, Michael. Come with me." I took them both to the bus station in Savannah, holding Natalie's hand, while Michael walked behind me, head down, avoiding the glances of others. The place was crowded, loudspeakers announced departures, voices mingled. But I paid no attention. I just wanted to get my son and my granddaughter home to the place they should never have left. I bought 3 bus tickets to Chicago and chose the seats at the back so they could sit together away from curious eyes. When the bus started, Natalie rested her head on my lap. Her tired eyes closed, her little hand not letting go of my fingers. Feeling those thin, cold fingers, but clinging so tightly, tore my soul apart. I stroked her messy hair, holding back tears. Michael sat next to me, staring silently out the window. The streetlights illuminated his gaunt face, highlighting the lines of suffering that didn't exist 3 years ago. His eyes looked exhausted, but I knew he was trying to hide the storm inside. In the silence of the night trip, as the engine hummed like a distant song, Michael began to speak in a hoarse voice, as if every word cost him enormous effort. "The first few days were the worst, Mom," he began without looking away from the dark glass. "I had no documents. Anna took them all. My ID, the family records, even Natalie's birth certificate. I couldn't rent a room or get a decent job." I listened to him while stroking Natalie's hair, but inside I felt like I was suffocating. The image of my son, the same one who used to proudly drive the small truck delivering sweets from the family factory, now wandering without a single paper, broke my heart. "What did you do to survive each day?" I asked in a shaky voice, though part of me was afraid to hear the answer. Michael took a deep breath as if needing courage. "I went to a construction site on the outskirts to ask for work as a helper. I thought at least I had my health, I could do heavy labor, but the foreman just looked me up and down and waved his hand. 'If you don't have papers, go somewhere else. I don't want problems.' I just stood there in the dust, feeling invisible. No one needed me. No one wanted to look at me." His voice broke, and I saw his shoulders tremble. That first night, Natalie and I slept on a park bench. It was cold, and she was hugging her old doll, the one her mother left her shaking nonstop. At midnight, it started to rain. I had to carry her and run to take shelter under the awning of a closed store. She was crying, calling for her mother, and I could only hold her tighter, but inside I felt helpless. I bit my lip, holding back tears. The image of Natalie, my little granddaughter, trembling in the rain and calling for her mother tore my soul apart. "Why didn't you call me Michael?" I whispered, my voice choked. "With one call, I would have come right away." Michael looked at me, his eyes red. "I wanted to, Mom," he said in a tone full of remorse. "One time I found a coin in the trash. I stood in front of a payphone for a long time, the coin in my hand shaking. I knew if I called you would come right away. But then the words I said that day came back to my head. Even if I starve, I will never come back to you. My stupid pride and shame stopped me. I was afraid. Afraid you would look at me with disappointment, that you would see me as a failure, someone who doesn't deserve to be your son." I took his hand, rough and scarred. That hand that was once soft, that used to hold the spoon with me while I stirred the chili in the kitchen, was now hard and marked. "I would never do that," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You are my son, Michael. No matter what happens, I will always love you." I squeezed his hand, wanting to give him a little strength, a little faith that everything would be okay. Michael lowered his head, and tears rolled down his cheeks. "I don't deserve it, Mom." I made Natalie suffer. One time she had a very high fever. She was delirious, calling for her mother. I had no money to take her to a doctor. I could only wet a cloth in the river and put it on her forehead while I prayed. I thought I was going to lose her. His voice broke, and Natalie, though asleep, stirred a little as if feeling her father's pain. I held Natalie tighter, and my tears fell on her hair. "You did everything you could, Michael," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't abandon Natalie even when everything was against you. I'm proud of you for not giving up." I knew my words wouldn't erase his pain, but I wanted him to understand that I would never blame him. Michael kept talking in a tired voice heavy with sorrow. "A homeless man took us under a bridge. He said at least we wouldn't get wet there. Every morning I left Natalie with an old woman who sold lottery tickets. She was kind, but also poor. She could only give her a little water and bread. Then I would walk the alleys looking for bottles and cans to sell. When I got lucky, I earned enough to buy a small carton of milk and some bread. But sometimes I found nothing, and we had to share a piece of stale bread from the day before. Natalie never complained, Mom. She just hugged her doll and said, 'Dad, tomorrow will be a better day, right?' I couldn't hold back anymore. The tears began to fall silently. I imagined Natalie, only 6 years old, living through those days, learning to endure hunger cold when she should have been playing, studying, and growing up in a warm home. I watched her sleep deeply in my arms, her face still dirty, but peaceful. "She's strong, Michael," I said, "and so are you. You survived. Now that Mom is here, everything will be different." When the bus stopped at the station in Chicago, it was already dawn. The early light spread softly over the familiar streets where I had lived all my life. I guided father and daughter back home, walking through the still empty streets as the aroma of fresh bread began to waft from the bakeries. Michael walked behind me, hesitant, as if he didn't dare believe he could come back. In front of the iron gate of the house, he stopped and looked at it with doubt in his eyes. "Mom, I don't know if I should go in," he murmured. "I hurt you. I don't deserve to be here." I opened the lock, pushed the gate open, and then took his hand. "This is your house, Michael. It always will be." the familiar smell of flour and sugar from the small bakery workshop behind the house mixed with the air like a warm welcome. Natalie looked around in amazement at the clean and cozy house. Her eyes shone, though there was still shyness in them. She pointed to the old sofa in the living room and said in a small voice, "Dad, can we sleep here tonight?" I picked her up and held her tightly, feeling her little body tremble with emotion. I couldn't hold back the tears that rolled down my cheeks anymore. "Not just tonight, Natalie," I said in a trembling but firm voice. "From now on, this is your home. No one will ever kick you out again." I looked at Michael, who remained on the threshold, his eyes red. The first thing I did was prepare a bath with hot water in the small bathroom. I took Natalie inside carefully, helping her take off her old, dirty clothes. Seeing her thin body, the faint bruises on her arms and legs, my heart ached. I washed her gently, afraid of hurting her. Natalie stayed still, her big eyes watching me, and smiled shyly when the foam settled on her hair. "Grandma, the warm water feels so good," she whispered in a clear but still fearful voice. I smiled, trying to hide the tears. "From now on, you can take a hot bath every day, Natalie," I told her, stroking her wet hair. In the closet, I found a small, delicate pink dress, which I had bought 2 years ago when I still had hope that Natalie would one day return. I thought I would never use it, but seeing the girl in the dress radiant as a little flower, I felt my heart fill with warmth. Michael also bathed and shaved the thick beard that covered his face. When he came out of the bathroom, dressed in his father's old clothes, a little big but clean, I almost didn't recognize him. Although he was still thin, his gaze no longer held so much darkness. I saw in him the son who used to laugh loudly in the kitchen when I taught him how to wrap the coconut candies. "Mom, do I look okay?" he asked, in an insecure voice, fearing my judgment. I approached him, put a hand on his shoulder, and smiled. "You're still Mom's handsome son," I said. My voice choked. He lowered his head and smiled faintly, but I could see the guilt still weighed heavily on him. For the first meal at home after 3 years apart, I prepared a big pot of chili just like in the old days. The aroma of corn pork and dried chilies filled the kitchen, like a reminder of the days when the family was still complete. Natalie sat at the table. Her eyes sparkled when she saw the bowl of chili full of cilantro. She ate 2 whole bowls, exclaiming between bites, "Grandma, this is so good. I've never tasted anything so delicious." I smiled and stroked her hair, but my gaze shifted to Michael. He ate in silence slowly, as if trying to swallow the painful memories too. I saw his shoulders tremble slightly, and I knew he wasn't just eating, but trying to reclaim the feeling of belonging to this home. My house, besides being a place to live, was also the workshop for Grandma's Sweets, the family business we had kept for 3 generations. The aroma of caramel, lemon zest, and shredded coconut was always part of my life. At first, Michael kept busy with small jobs in the workshop. He swept the floor, carried sacks of sugar and flour, working tirelessly, as if trying to redeem himself with physical labor. I let him do it without saying anything, but every time I saw him soaked in sweat, I felt a knot in my chest. "Rest a bit, son," I told him one afternoon, seeing him wipe his forehead. But Michael just shook his head. "I have to do it, Mom. I owe you too much, Natalie." Meanwhile, she adapted quickly. I enrolled her in a nearby elementary school. She was smart, bright, and in a few weeks she had already caught up with her classmates. Every afternoon when I went to pick her up, she would run to me, hug me tight, and excitedly start telling me her stories from the day. "Grandma, today, the teacher praised me for drawing the best picture in class," she would say, showing me a clumsy but colorful drawing. Natalie's laughter seemed to bring the light back into the house, dispelling the silence that had covered it for 3 years. One day, as I was struggling with my order notebook, trying to calculate the amount of sweets for the next week, the numbers danced before my tired eyes. Michael came in, saw me struggling with the notebook. "Let me, Mom. I have a faster way to do it." I was surprised, but I let him try. He sat down at my old computer and started exploring. In a few days, Michael had created a simple website for the bakery. He took pictures of the freshly made sweets and uploaded them to social media with little stories about our family recipes. "Mom, people buy online a lot now," he explained enthusiastically. "We have to keep up." I looked at my son and couldn't help but feel proud. My Michael, despite all the pain he had experienced, was still smart and creative. The orders started coming in at first, just a few from the city, but gradually the good reputation spread. People talked about a family brand that not only offered delicious sweets, but also a moving story of reunion. Michael designed new packaging, simple but professional, with the image of a grandmother making sweets next to a smiling girl. It was me and Natalie. He contacted delivery services, expanded the business to other states, and soon the phone was ringing off the hook with new orders. The workshop was full of life again, just like in the old days. One late night when I entered the workshop, the lights were still on. Michael was focused on packing the last orders for delivery the next morning. He looked up, sweat covering his forehead, but a little life shone in his eyes. I made him a cup of hot chocolate just as I used to when he was a boy and put it on the table. "Rest a bit, son," I said softly. Michael took the cup, inhaled deeply, and looked up at me. "Mom, I don't know how to thank you. If it weren't for you, Natalie and I—" His voice broke, and he didn't finish the sentence. I put my hand on his shoulder and smiled. "You don't need to say anything. Having you and Natalie here with me is enough." He smiled, a real smile, the first one in 3 years. In that moment, I knew the wounds of the past were beginning to heal, but deep down I still felt regret. I wished I had set my pride aside and looked for Michael sooner. Maybe he and his daughter wouldn't have had to endure so many years of pain. I promised myself that from now on I would not let anyone or anything harm this family again. Our life slowly returned to normal. The bakery was thriving so much that a company in Canada contacted us to discuss importing our coconut candies and caramels. I watched Michael work, negotiate with partners, manage orders, and I saw how he regained his confidence. Natalie was also growing every day, becoming a cheerful girl who filled the house with light and laughter. But one sunny afternoon, when the workshop was full of customers coming and going, a taxi stopped in front of the gate. The sound of the tires on the pavement made me lift my head with a sense of unease. A woman got out of the car dressed in a tight dress and sunglasses that covered almost her entire face. Michael, who was carrying a box to the truck, stopped dead, his hands hanging at his sides. Natalie, who was sitting on the doorstep reading a comic book, looked up with wide eyes. The woman slowly took off her sunglasses, revealing a face I could never forget. Anna. The ghost of the past had returned, standing in front of my house with that icy smile that I knew would bring a new storm. The bustle of the workshop suddenly died down, as if the whole world was holding its breath. The laughter and voices of customers choosing coconut candies and caramels stopped, replaced by curious glances toward the entrance. Anna was there in front of the gate with her tight dress and dark glasses that almost covered her face. She smiled a perfect smile like an actress on stage, but I clearly saw the ice in her eyes. That smile didn't reach them. It had no warmth. It was a mask meant to hide intentions that I knew were not good. My first reaction was to go out and stand in front of Natalie, guided by a protective instinct. The girl sitting on the doorstep dropped her comic book to the ground as she looked at the stranger. Michael, still holding the box, let it fall with a thud. He moved immediately, placing himself in front of Natalie, his body tense as a rope about to snap. I could feel the mix of anger and fear in every movement, as if Anna were a dangerous beast capable of harming the girl at any moment. Natalie huddled behind her father, her small hand tightly gripping the hem of Michael's shirt. "Dad, who is she?" the girl whispered, innocent but bewildered. That question was like a dagger in my heart. Natalie was still too young to understand what had happened to remember that the woman in front of us had been her mother and had abandoned her and Michael at the airport 3 years ago. "Natalie, sweetie!" Anna's voice was sickeningly sweet, like an out-of-tune song. She knelt, opened her arms with tears welling up on her carefully made-up face. "Come to Mommy. I've missed you so much." A perfect performance, but I saw the calculation in every gesture. Natalie backed away, pressed even closer to Michael, her eyes wide with fear. "Dad," the girl murmured, her voice trembling. I stepped forward. I put myself between Anna and Natalie, my voice as cold as ice. "You are not welcome here, Anna. Leave." I tried to stay calm, but the anger inside me burned like a fire. This woman had taken everything from Michael, his money, his honor, and even Natalie's future, and had abandoned them at the lowest point of society. And now she dared to come back pretending to be a loving mother. Michael spoke. His voice no longer trembled with fear but sounded firm and sharp. "What do you want, Anna? Haven't you caused us enough suffering already?" I felt the resentment in his voice, but also a hint of pain, as if the old wound hadn't fully healed. Anna stood up, dusted off her expensive dress, and the smile on her lips faded. She glanced at the curious customers watching her, then looked at us with a soft but calculating voice. "I just want to make things right, Michael. I want to give Natalie a complete family. I made a mistake, but now I want to start over." I laughed with contempt, unable to hide my disdain. "A complete family. Do you even know how to spell that? You abandoned your daughter at the airport and let her live under a bridge for 3 years, and now you dare to talk about family? Get out of here right now." My voice echoed sharper than I expected, and some customers flinched. I didn't care. I just wanted Anna to disappear to protect Natalie and Michael from any more harm. Seeing that we weren't backing down, Anna changed her attitude. The fake smile vanished and gave way to a sharp look. Her voice turned cold. "Very well, Helen. If you want to talk straight, I will. I'm back to fight for custody of Natalie and—" She paused, pointing to the bakery full of customers, where the shelves still smelled of coconut candies and caramels. "This place should be half mine. Michael, did you forget we were once married?" Michael almost lunged at her fists, clenched his face red with rage. "You have no right!" he shouted, but I grabbed his hand and stopped him. I knew Anna was trying to provoke us, wanting us to lose our cool in front of everyone. I looked at her steadily, my voice calm but firm. "You won't get a single dollar, and you won't get near my granddaughter. Now leave Anna before I call the police." Anna let out a shrill laugh, as if enjoying the moment. "Let's see what an old woman like you can do," she said sarcastically. "Just wait for the court summons. Natalie is my daughter, and I'm going to get back what's mine." With that, she turned, put on her sunglasses, got into a taxi and left, leaving an oppressive silence in the bakery. The customers, uncomfortable, paid quickly and left as if they didn't want to be involved in the drama that had just unfolded. The bakery, once full of laughter and conversation, now felt strangely empty. Only the trays of candy remained motionless on the shelves, and the sweet aroma seemed out of place. Michael stood motionless, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles had turned white. I saw his shoulders tremble, not knowing if it was from anger or fear. Natalie, still hidden behind her father, looked up at me and asked in a low voice, "Grandma, is she my mom? Why did she say that?" I knelt, hugged her, and tried to hide the fury boiling inside me. "Don't worry, Natalie," I whispered, stroking her hair. "Grandma and your dad won't let anyone take you. You'll stay here with us, okay?" The girl nodded, though her eyes were still full of confusion. I looked at the sky outside. Gray clouds were gathering, covering the bright morning sun. A storm was coming, not just outside, but inside me too. It all started one morning a few days later while I was checking orders on the bakery's website. A notification popped up from a food review group in Chicago. An account called New Mommy had posted. "Warning to everyone. My son had a stomachache all night after eating the coconut candies from the Grandma's Sweets bakery. I don't know what ingredients they use." The post was accompanied by a photo of a box of coconut candies with our logo taken carelessly, as if to make it look cheap. I felt my blood boil. Grandma's Sweets had been around for 3 generations, always with clean ingredients, a family recipe, without a single complaint. This couldn't be true. Before I could respond, tons of comments from unknown accounts started appearing supporting the post. Yes, I noticed a weird taste lately, too. They say they use chemical sugar to save costs. I bought once and never went back. Michael, who was sitting next to me, looked at the screen, his face pale. He immediately logged into the bakery's account and wrote a comment explaining that all ingredients were carefully checked, that we could show quality certificates. But his comment was quickly buried by a wave of criticism. Those accounts, like a pack of wolves, kept attacking and spreading lies without any proof. The matter escalated faster than I imagined. Just 2 days later, a video appeared on social media. It showed a young woman, her face covered in tears, sitting next to the bed of an unconscious child with an IV in his arm. The woman sobbed. "Just because I trusted a family brand. Now my son is hospitalized for food poisoning. Please boycott this cruel bakery." Next to the bed, placed very visibly, was a box of coconut candies with the Grandma's Sweets logo. Watching the video, I felt like someone was choking me. There was no proof, no hospital name, no medical documents, but the video spread at an alarming speed. A local gossip site immediately published the headline, "The Truth Behind the Family Sweet Shop, Dirty Ingredients and Heartless Profits." The bakery's phone started ringing off the hook, but it wasn't for orders. It was calls to cancel, angry insults, and even threats. "Are you making candy to poison people? Damn you!" An unknown voice shouted before hanging up. The partner stores, those that used to sell our sweets, enthusiastically called to ask to suspend the partnership. The company from Canada with whom we were negotiating the export deal also sent an email announcing they would temporarily suspend the deal to investigate the product's quality. Every call, every email was like a stab in the heart. But what hurt most were the looks from others. Mrs. Mary, my lifelong neighbor, who used to come every day to ask for lemon peels for her tea, now just lowered her head and walked away when she saw me. One night I heard a loud thud outside. When I went out, I saw several rotten eggs smashed against the door. The smell was unbearable. The workshop, once brimming with laughter and conversation, became silent and cold. The trays of freshly made sweets with that delicious aroma of coconut and milk sat untouched on the shelves with no one to buy them. Natalie, though still going to school, began to notice the change. One afternoon she came home with red-rimmed eyes. She hugged me tightly and sobbed. "Grandma, my classmates say your candy makes people sick. Is it true?" I held her, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "No, Natalie. Grandma's sweets are made with all my heart. They would never hurt anyone. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." But when she nodded and cuddled in my arms, I knew I had just promised something I didn't know if I could deliver. One night, as I turned off the lights in the workshop to close, I saw Michael sitting alone in a corner, his head resting on the table, surrounded by unpacked boxes of sweets. The dim light from the street lamp outside came through the window, illuminating his gaunt face. I approached and put a hand on his shoulder. "Michael, go to sleep, son. It's late." He lifted his head, his eyes red from insomnia, and said in a hoarse voice, "Mom, maybe we should close the bakery. I'll give her half like she asked. I don't want you or Natalie to keep suffering because of this. It's all my fault. If I hadn't let Anna come back, none of this would have happened." Hearing him, all my tiredness vanished, and I felt a flame of anger and determination light up inside me. I sat down in front of him, took his hands and squeezed them tightly. "Listen to me, Michael," I said in a firm voice. "We did nothing wrong. This bakery is the soul of our family. Your grandfather's your father's, and now yours and mine. I will not let that demon destroy it, nor will I let her get near Natalie. I would rather fight to the end than give up." Michael looked at me still with doubt in his eyes, but I saw a glimmer of hope. "Mom, aren't you scared?" he murmured like a small child. I smiled even though I was shattered inside. "Of course I'm scared, son, but I'm more scared of losing you and Natalie. I already lost you once, and I won't let it happen again." I got up, went to my room, and opened my husband's old wooden chest. Inside was a worn-out contact book where he kept the numbers of his closest friends. I flipped through the pages, my heart pounding until I found a name. Mr. Robert. He was a retired lawyer who had helped our family years ago when we almost lost the bakery over a land issue. I dialed the number with trembling hands. On the other side, a deep, familiar voice answered. "Hello. Who is this?" "Robert, it's me, Helen," I said, taking a deep breath to keep my voice steady. "I need your help. My family is in big trouble." I briefly told him about Anna, the rumors, the threat of taking Natalie's custody, and ruining the bakery. Mr. Robert listened without interrupting and then replied, "Helen, calm down. I'll be there tomorrow. We'll sort this out." I hung up the phone feeling a bit of relief, But I also knew this battle was just beginning. Outside, the gray clouds still hung, but inside me, a new determination was lit. I would protect my family, no matter the cost. The next morning, Mr. Robert appeared at my door, tall and in a worn suit, but still with the firm presence of a former investigator. His hair was almost completely gray, but his sharp gaze and calm voice gave me confidence. He wasn't alone. He was accompanied by a young woman dressed in an elegant office suit, her black hair pulled back, and an intelligent, confident look. "Helen, this is lawyer Lucy Herrera," Mr. Robert introduced her in a firm voice. "She is my most trusted collaborator, a specialist in complicated cases. She will help us." We sat in the living room amidst the gloomy atmosphere of the bakery grandma's sweets. The trays of candy were still untouched on the shelves without the usual bustle. Natalie was at school, and I was relieved she wouldn't witness this tension. Michael and I told the whole story, from that fateful day 3 years ago when Anna abandoned father and daughter to the malicious rumors now circulating on the internet. Michael, sitting next to me, wrung his hands on his knees, his voice full of remorse as he recalled his mistakes. I spoke about Anna, how she had shown up at the door demanding custody of Natalie and a part of the bakery. With every word I said, I felt the mix of anger and fear, but I forced myself to stay calm so as not to distress Michael further. Lawyer Lucy listened attentively, taking notes in a small notebook. She didn't interrupt, just nodded occasionally as if she were fitting pieces together in her mind. When we finished, she didn't show sympathy, but asked a direct question. "When you got divorced, Mr. Michael, did you sign any other agreement besides the document transferring assets, any paper related to custody or common property?" Michael shook his head with a desperate look. "I don't remember clearly, Ms. Lucy. I was in shock. Anna gave me the papers and I just signed. I just wanted it to be over quickly so she would take Natalie to Australia as she promised." Lucy nodded, not taking her eyes off Michael. "All right, the first thing is to recover that divorce file. It will be the key to defining your and Natalie's legal rights." Then she turned to me with a firm voice. "Mrs. Helen, I need any documents related to the bakery, the business license contracts with suppliers, and quality certificates for the ingredients. We will prove that the rumors about the sweets are false." Mr. Roberts spoke in a grave but determined voice. "As for Anna, leave her to me. To create a smear campaign of this magnitude, she couldn't have done it alone. She must have left traces, and I will find them." He said he had a contact in the telecommunications sector who could trace the social media accounts that spread the rumors. "Those accounts didn't just appear out of nowhere," he said. "We'll find their origin." He also proposed investigating the hospital from the viral video where the child was supposedly poisoned by our sweets. "I don't think someone like Anna could stage a perfect story without leaving loose ends," he added with a spark of confidence in his eyes. I felt a small ray of hope light up inside me, although I was still worried. I looked at Michael, who kept his head down, hands clasped tightly. "Mom, I'm sorry," he murmured. "If I hadn't let myself be fooled by Anna the first time, maybe she wouldn't be bothering us again now." I took his hand and squeezed it hard. "Don't blame yourself anymore, son. We'll get through this together. I promise you. I knew it wouldn't be easy to keep that promise, but I couldn't let Michael break down again." Mr. Robert got to work immediately. Just 2 days later, he called, his voice enthusiastic. "Helen, we found it. All the social media accounts that spread the rumors are fake accounts created less than a month ago. They operate from the same IP addresses, and one of them is registered at an internet cafe in Savannah. I had them check the security footage, and just as I imagined, Anna appears on the recordings using a computer right at the time the messages were posted." I gripped the phone. My heart was pounding. So she was behind it all, just as I suspected. Mr. Robert continued. "I also went to the hospital where the boy in the video was treated. The boy was indeed hospitalized, but not for food poisoning. He has asthma and suffered an acute attack. The boy's mother, an old friend of Anna's, admitted that she was offered money to participate in the charade. They staged the crying scene and placed the box of your brand's sweets to record the video." I felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger at Anna's cruelty, but relief that the truth was starting to come out. Meanwhile, Lucy the lawyer and I went to the courthouse in Savannah, where Michael and Anna's divorce had taken place 3 years ago. Getting a copy of an old file was not an easy task, especially since Anna had done everything possible to hide it. But thanks to Lucy's contacts and her patience, we managed to get the file in our hands after a long morning. We sat in a small cafe near the courthouse, leafing through each yellowish page of the document. The smell of coffee couldn't ease my tension. Each page was like a fragment of the past, reminding me of the painful days Michael had suffered. Then Lucy stopped on the last page, a typewritten sheet with letters so small we had to squint to read it. She held it out to me, her eyes shining. "Mrs. Helen read this." I took it with trembling hands, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a voluntary declaration signed by Anna Rogers. The text read, "I, Anna Rogers, after receiving all assets from Mr. Michael Vance, commit to never again request support or claim any right to Mr. Vance's future assets." I read that line over and over, feeling an immense weight lift from my shoulders. Anna, in her own caution, had shot herself in the foot. She signed that document to ensure Michael wouldn't interfere in her new life, but now it had become the evidence that condemned her. I handed the paper to Michael, who had been sitting silently beside me for a while. He read it, his eyes went wide, and then he looked at me. "Mom, what does this mean?" he asked, his voice trembling. Lucy smiled in a firm tone. "It means Anna has no legal right to claim your assets or the bakery. And with everything she's done, false accusations, defamation, we can sue her for slander and intentional damages." At that moment, Lucy's phone rang. It was Mr. Robert. "Helen, I have more news," he said excitedly. "Anna isn't living so well as she pretends. She invested all the money she took from Michael in cryptocurrency overseas and lost it all. Now she owes a large amount of money. She read an article on a Mexican food blog that praised the success of the Grandma's Sweets Bakery. That's why she came back. Not just to get Natalie, but to get money from you and Michael." All the pieces fell into place. I held the copy of the agreement, my heart aching for Michael's naivety, but also filled with renewed hope. "God is fair," I murmured, my eyes misting over. Lucy put her hand on my shoulder and smiled confidently. "We're not just defending ourselves anymore, Mrs. Helen. We are going to fight back. I will prepare the lawsuit against Anna for defamation and damages. With this document and Mr. Roberts' evidence, she won't stand a chance." The day of the trial, I got up at dawn. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusted my simple but neat dress, and tried to breathe deeply to stay calm. Today wasn't just a hearing, it was a battle to protect my family, to defend what we had rebuilt from the ashes. I looked at Natalie asleep on the sofa with her old doll in her hands. I decided to leave her at home with 2 trusted bakery employees, Rosa and John. I didn't want her to witness her biological mother in front of us in court. She was too young to endure another wound. The courthouse in Savannah was packed. When we entered, I felt the curious stares and murmurs from the public. On the other side, Anna was sitting next to her lawyer, a middle-aged man in a shiny suit. She wore a dark blue dress, her hair pulled back, and smiled confidently at the journalists she had clearly invited. I saw her look at us with a sideways smile, as if she was already tasting victory. Next to her was the woman from the video, the poisoned boy's mother, her face tense but feigning sadness. I took Michael's hand and felt its coldness. "Stay calm, son," I whispered. "The truth is on our side." On our side, there were only 4 people. Me, Michael lawyer, Lucy, and Mr. Robert. There were no flashes pointed at us, no applause. We remained silent, but I felt the determination in Lucy's and Robert's eyes. They were our support, my family's, in that decisive moment. The trial began. Anna's lawyer stood up with a voice so theatrical he seemed like a stage actor. He told a story that I knew was false, that Anna was a wife and mother abused by her husband, kicked out of her home, and forced to make a living alone overseas. He said she had returned only to claim justice, to reunite with her daughter, and to recover the part of the estate she deserved. He called the woman as a witness, and she, between sobs, told how her son almost died. From our suites. The journalist took notes nonstop. The flashes never stopped. I looked at Michael. I saw him with his head down, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. I put my hand on his shoulder and whispered, Don't be afraid, son. She can't win. When it was our turn, lawyer Lucy stood up. Her bearing was serene but full of authority. She didn't argue the slander or fall into the emotional trap Anna had set. Instead, she started with the first piece of evidence the food safety and sanitation certificate for the sweet shop issued just a month ago. The bakery Grandma's Sweets has been operating for over 60 years without a single case of food poisoning, she said in a clear, firm voice. All ingredients are carefully checked, and we have all the documentation to prove it. Then she presented the evidence from the hospital along with the statement from the doctor who treated the boy in the video. This child was admitted for an acute asthma attack, not food poisoning, Lucy explained, showing the medical report. The woman who served as a witness turned pale, lowered her head, and avoided looking at the judge. Lucy continued, "This woman received money to invent a false story, and we have proof of the financial transaction between her and the defendant, Mrs. Anna Rogers." The room fell silent. I heard murmurs among the journalists, but this time the cameras were pointed at Anna. She remained seated upright, though I noticed her gripping the edge of the table. The confident smile was gone. And then came the final blow. Lucy held up a copy of the voluntary agreement. Her voice echoed like a hammer blow. "Your Honor, this is the document signed by Anna Rogers herself 3 years ago. In it, she declares she completely waives any right to assets or support from Mr. Michael Vance after having received the entirety of the common property. Her return today, claiming custody of her daughter and a part of the bakery, not only violates this agreement, but constitutes a deliberate act of fraud and defamation against the Vance family." She also presented evidence about Anna's financial situation. Large debts in Australia, a failed investment in cryptocurrency, and a food blog article that revealed her intention to return to get money, Lucy concluded. Mrs. Rogers did not return for love of her daughter, but out of greed. She mounted a smear campaign to destroy the reputation of the Grandma's Sweets bakery, causing serious economic and emotional damages to the plaintiff's family. Anna sat frozen, her face completely pale. "No, that's false," she stammered, standing up, her voice trembling. But the signature on the document was authentic notarized. Her lawyer tried to refute it, but his arguments were weak, unable to tear down the evidence. The judge struck the gavel and the courtroom fell into absolute silence. After deliberating, he delivered the verdict. The demands of the defendant, Mrs. Anna Rogers, regarding custody and assets are rejected. Furthermore, based on the evidence presented, this court finds that there are indications of defamation and intentional damages. The plaintiff has the right to file a countersuit against Mrs. Rogers for said actions. The reporters who had come looking for scandalous headlines about the evil bakery now pointed their cameras at Anna. Panicked, she tried to cover her face with her hands and quickly slipped out of the courtroom, disappearing into the crowd. I watched her go, feeling no satisfaction, only a deep sadness. When we left the courthouse, the sun was shining brightly, as if the sky itself was celebrating our victory. Some neighbors were waiting at the entrance, among them Mrs. Mary. She ran to me, took my hands, and said in a voice full of regret, "Helen, forgive me. We were so foolish to believe those rumors. You and Michael didn't deserve to go through all this." I smiled and shook my head. "Don't worry, Mary. It's all over. Thank you for coming." When the crowd dispersed, only Michael, Lucy, Mr. Robert, and I remained. I took Lucy's hand, my eyes misting over. "Ms. Lucy, thank you. If it weren't for you and Mr. Robert, I don't know what would have become of my family." Lucy smiled with a warm look. "Mrs. Helen, I just did my job, but I must tell you, you are the strongest mother I have ever met." Mr. Robert nodded and clapped Michael on the shoulder. "You're a good man, Michael. Don't let the past define you." When we got home, Natalie was playing in the yard with Sister Rosa. When she saw us, she ran to us, hugging my legs, and Michael's laughing with joy. "Grandma, Dad, my teacher praised me today for my essay about our family." I lifted her into my arms, feeling her little heart beat strongly. Michael hugged me and said in a choked voice, "Mom, thank you. If it weren't for you, Natalie and I." He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. I patted his back and smiled. "We are family, Michael. I will always be here for you." The sunlight illuminated the yard, making the trays of freshly baked sweets in the workshop shine. I looked at the blue sky without a single cloud. We don't need to go to faraway Australia to find happiness, I thought. As long as we are together, that's enough. After everything we've been through, I understood that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but freeing your heart from hatred and pain. Life can take everything from us. Money, prestige, even faith. But if we hold on to love and kindness, we can always start over. I understood that sometimes pain is life's way of teaching us to distinguish between the false and the true, between those who come to hurt us and those who stay to heal us. I no longer blame Anna, nor do I hold resentment for the past, because it was precisely those wounds that made me stronger, able to protect my son and my granddaughter. And if there is one thing I want to say to those who feel lost amidst suffering and loss, it is this: never believe that everything is over. Sometimes it is in the ruins that we find the way back home. The story you have just heard has had names and places changed to protect the identity of those involved. We don't tell this to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence within their own home? I sincerely wonder, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you stay silent to keep the peace, or would you have the courage to face it all, to get your voice back? I want to know your opinion because every story can be a candle that lights another person's path. God always blesses, and I am convinced that courage will guide us to better days. For now, at the end of the screen, I will leave 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.